Blackman, her first ONS meeting. I believe you did your training last week, which is really good. And also, I'm just going to change the agenda slightly. So the community broadband, she's here. Is she online? Is she here?
It's not showing.
I'm here, Janice.
Yeah,
Right. If you would like to go first in a second, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
right. Okay. Right. So if we can do apologies for absence, please.
We have an apologies from Councillor Samuel, Councillor Moody, Councillor Coulson and Councillor Moyes and Councillor Wood are joining via Teams. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. If we can have a confirmation of the minutes, which are pages 1 to 6 of the agenda from the meeting held on 16th of November. So is everybody happy with those minutes? Thank you. Declarations of interest. The usual paragraph, if anything comes up that you think that you have an interest in, please could you declare. Not to be horrible, but I'm just going to point out to Councillor Blackman, because when the speaker is in your area, so something may come up that I don't know about or anything, but you may suddenly think, ouch, I might need to say something. Okay, even if you're not overly short, we'll soon say, don't worry about it. Okay, right, thank you. Items requiring urgent attention? None? Brilliant. Public forum, I can't see anybody. No. Right, so if we move to item 9, the community broadband quarterly update, please, which will be delivered via Teams.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, I'm the Community Broadband Champion, Gemma, if you haven't met me yet. I've got 4 slides I'm just going to share, if that's okay, to make it a bit easier. So I'm going to just share my screen. Apologies if I'm looking to the right, it's because that's where I'm looking at, so I can keep you on one screen and look at my slides on the other. Just to recap on what's happening, I now have regular monthly meetings with all the suppliers delivering digital connectivity, and that's basically companies that provide access to the internet in West Devon. I've also got weekly catch-ups now with Connecting Devon and Somerset and with Airband because of the size of their rollout in West Devon. There are still issues with data sharing with CDS, which we're working with them and pushing them on. But I need to acknowledge that now that the data that they have promised to share with us is we are still waiting on. So that does present some difficulties. What you can see on the screen here is the front page of the web page that we have set up. Hopefully you may have seen that already. I believe it's the only one location where you can see all these matters, all the headings here pulled together in one place. Far more information here than I think you'll find on Connecting Devon and Somerset's webpage. And we ran this online form where we asked people if they're looking for better broadband. And we've had, in West Devon, we've had 220 people respond saying that they desperately do need better broadband. And of that, that's 76 businesses. So a really strong response to that, to the form. So the part of the form was also looking to recruit a team of volunteer broadband champions. So we now have 45 people volunteered to cover West Devon, and that covers 25 of the 59 parishes across the borough. The champions, to help the champions understand the project that we're hoping they'll run, they will be responsible for. We've run a series of webinars just before Christmas, which was really well attended. CDS joined, so did the suppliers, and I think we had quite a number of district as well as parish councillors also at the webinars to understand the work that we were doing. The main project that we're asking them to do at the moment, the champions that is to start to build a database of people in their area who need better broadband. And we've shared with them a spreadsheet which they will hopefully start to populate. And I hope for some of the people it will actually lead them to find ways that they can improve their broadband already without having to look at any further sort of infrastructure improvements. But ultimately, what we hope these champions will do will help us to identify clusters of people that we can support through raising funding through the Gigabit voucher scheme, and then we can help them in a similar way to what's happened in Sydenham Damerel, we can help them progress their projects through. In fact, we've got a project in Clearbrook, Yelverton, which we have now secured. They have, together with us, secured enough funding to progress which would connect up. I think it's 127 properties, which is great. But generally, these broadband champions will be our foot soldiers on the ground to help communicate what's happening with digital connectivity, because actually, as there is only me covering West Devon and South Hams, we hope that this body, these people who have volunteered their time, will develop the knowledge and to be able to help their respective communities. You might ask, why are we doing this, and why is Connecting Devon and Somerset not doing this? Which is a fair question, as in other local bodies across the country, they are the ones running the Broadband Champion programme. My only answer to that is simply that Connecting Devon and Somerset don't appear to have the resources, but it's a really important part of community engagement, I think, in helping residents understand what's happening. So that's why we've taken the lead in this instance. So this slide is just taking you through what we've learned so far in terms of what's actually happening in West Devon, what's actually being built. I'm going to start with Openreach. So on the map here, you can see Openreach have said that they will deliver fibre to the premise to the areas, the red sections on this map. So in each of these areas, they've committed to deliver fibre to the premise to up to 75% of the properties or businesses in each of these segments. I already know that in Tavistock and Oakhampton, they've actually already exceeded 75%. So obviously in some areas they can go beyond this. And they're doing this on a commercial basis. So this isn't a government funded scheme. This is simply Openreach doing this as part of their business. In terms of what Airband are doing, the fibre rollout, which is really getting started in West Devon, they will hopefully be connecting up 1,348 premises, which is 5% of the properties in West Devon. However, we do anticipate that many more will still be connected. Not wanting to raise a red flag trouble here, but just as a comparison, 17% of South Hams will be getting fibre to the premises. And the reason for the difference between South Hams and West Devon is because of the fixed wireless rollout in West Devon, which I believe does mean that West Devon will be first in line, should be first in line. And that's part of what I see myself will be able to lobby for, is when we know there's future funding coming down from central government, and because West Devon's full fibre figures are lower than South Hams and some of the surrounding districts, West Devon should be in line for further central government funding when that does get released. And there are other alternative network providers building also in West Devon. In and around the Oakhampton area, we've got Jurassic Fibre. We've been talking to Jurassic about encouraging them to expand into the Sticklepath Zeal side of Oakhampton, which I'm hoping that actually is a project that we can have some positive news on soon. City Fibre is an alternative fibre company just within Plymouth, but we hope that I know that they're expanding fast, and so we will be encouraging them to expand into the sections of the city into West Devon, so we can hopefully make use of their expanding business. I mentioned Airband again because while they are delivering the CDS contract, they will also be looking for extensions to those fibre routes on a commercial basis. And so we are equally working with Airband, or I'm working with Airband to where there are community groups off the planned fibre route to see how much it would cost for Airband to take their fibre lines to that new community. For example, to Kelly, we're at the moment asking them to quote that up and see if there are enough residents there through the gigabit vouchers to fund an extension to the fibre network. And lastly, no doubt you're aware of Airband as a fixed wireless company, but there are actually quite a number of others that operate in West Devon. We've got Radio Fibre, Skylight, Cloud Wireless. And so we're going to use our community broadband champions to identify where there may be gaps in their coverage, because these fixed wireless companies are maybe the solution for the deepest, ruralist hamlets and isolated properties where it may not be commercially viable to deliver fibre. So we're keeping in close contact with these companies. So lastly, how I see the project progressing. We will continue our engagement with the suppliers and organisations to keep ourselves in touch with what's happening. We're going to be assisting the broadband champions in the work that they've started on. We're also developing a robust digital policy that hopefully will be included in any revision to the joint local plan. It's a policy that's already been shared with neighbourhood plan groups that they would be able to use at this point if they believe digital connectivity was an issue in their area. We need to continue to push CDS on greater transparency and work with them to share their data with us. Obviously, communicating to that, we have this database now of 220 people. We have communicated with them and asked them to get in touch with their community broadband champion, but there are obviously some areas that aren't covered, so we need to encourage those parishes in those areas to hopefully step forward and take on this role, to help us to work with and address the issues of the 220 on our database. And in general, we need to make sure West Devon is prioritised, as I mentioned earlier, in future government funding, particularly because of this issue of the fact that you've had the fixed wireless contract, which I think anecdotally I've heard has a mixed response, and I think most people would probably prefer to have fibre. So we need to push government to do better in West Devon for the next round of funding, and we need to challenge CDS on where their funding goes to. Because when they have funded the fibre contracts in West Devon, when there's a certain uptake in contracts on the delivery of the fibre, CDS get money back in the pot. So I believe that if we can encourage greater uptake in West Devon should keep a proportionate amount of that funding to put back into our community. So that's something I will be pushing for. Sorry, that was incredibly whistle stop. A lot of content to try and cover, keeping it short, but please ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. That was absolutely brilliant. Really well done there, and a lot of information. Thank you. Councillor Kimber's got the first question, please, Gemma.
Thank you, Gemma. I just wondered if you'll be writing to the parishes who don't have a broadband champion, or perhaps you can let us know if they're our parishes.
Yes, certainly. I have communicated with them, and you can see it yourself if you're interested. On all the broadband champions are now actually made public on our website. So we have they're all detailed on the digital connectivity web pages on the West Devon site. But I could also share with you a spreadsheet which may be easier to just visually see which ones are underrepresented, if you like.
Just going forward from there, Gemma, that would, Councillor Peter Crozier, who's the lead member for Broadband, he could let some of us know, as other councillors, if, for example, we've got parishes and you can kick our proverbials to see if we can find on the ground people who can maybe become parish broadband champions, etc. Gemma, to make that easier for you as well.
That would be great.
Because we may know people on the ground who others may not.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question for Gemma, please? No? I think we've done it in time, Gemma, for you. So thank you very much indeed for your presentation. I've looked on the council website, and it's a really good few pages that you've got on there now. It's from where we were a couple of years ago, we've moved on in leaps and bounds, which is really good, and we will keep broadband as part of the overview and scrutiny agenda. So as you know, you come along quarterly or however it fits in. So thank you very much, and hopefully we will meet you in person one day.
Yeah, thank you for accommodating this time shift.
That's okay. Thanks a lot, Gemma. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So if we now move, so we've done that. I'm just going to ask Councillor, sorry, my mind's gone black, I'm looking at him. Councillor Jury and Councillor, I'm so sorry. Thank you. I know who he is, but as some people know, some things aren't quite functioning quite right today. Right. Are you okay if we ask Mr. Cook if he goes first, as he's a visitor, and then we can all sit and wait for yours, and I might be gone by then as well. Right. Mr. Cook, Dan, if you'd like to give your presentation from the AONB. I understand there are members in the room that you know,
There are a couple, yes.
And let's see your presentation, please.
Okay. Is that working? And can everybody hear me? So thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for inviting me to give an overview and touch on some of the key issues facing the Tamar Valley AONB. My name's Dan Cook. I've been manager of the AONB. Is that better?
Yes, this is the Teams people.
Yeah. So I've been manager of the AONB for almost precisely a year, having joined last year on the 4th of January. 5th of January, we went into lockdown, so it was a weird and wonderful time to start, but nonetheless, hopefully know how things are going on. I'm going to cover three key areas: an introduction, overview of the AONB, governance, how we operate and our partners, including West Devon, then our core programmes and performance, including our contribution to West Devon's priorities, hopefully, and value for money, and finish with a couple of the big picture issues and opportunities for the coming years, and then obviously Q&A at the end. First of all, this is just a map showing the extent of the AONB. We obviously, we actually have 5 local authority partners covering the AONB itself, which is West Devon, South Hams, Devon County, Cornwall County Council, our host, and a sliver of Plymouth City Council. I'm pleased to say they are all well represented and active partners, and we stretch from Greystone Bridge up in the north right down to Plymouth, and of course the almost forgotten or often forgotten corner, the other side of the river on the Liner estuary as well. But the Tavy and the Tamar are at the heart of the AONB. So we are a partnership entity. We are established via a memorandum of agreement that was formed and agreed in 2015, which is officially a joint working protocol. AONB is just a bit of background. We are established with duties under the Countryside and Rights of Way Act 2000. Our primary purpose of that designation is to conserve and enhance natural beauty within the area. We are funded via DEFRA core grant, local authority partner contributions, and other project grant funding, which I will touch upon. The reason for mentioning the MOA is because we had a governance review last year, which was very thorough, which we investigated whether the MOA was fit for purpose, which I'm pleased to say it was. Our terms of reference were rewritten, and I'll touch upon that. And we had a partnership refresh and rebuild exercise. So all of those partner representatives you see there, plus others, are fully committed or recommitted to the partnership that is the AONB. So we revisited our governance and governance model. You can see we are effectively, our board is the partnership itself, of which West Devon are members, the executive, on which you have a representation from Councillor Coulson at present, is the operations or the hub of operations and scrutiny, and we have other working groups for partnerships and projects, as well as external links and an annual forum to bring in wider stakeholders, and a small staff unit and team delivering that feeds into all of that. That's how we work. I've mentioned the refresh and rebuild exercise. We paid particular attention to the terms of reference, making sure they were clear and that they set out the commitment of all of our partners as well as the AONB itself. It is a two-way process being a partner, so hopefully partners such as West Devon get a lot of good value out of it and out of their contribution and partnership, and likewise we do our best to deliver on the priorities of partners as well as on our core purpose and functions. So just mentioning in terms of our awareness and integration and meeting your priorities in terms of value for money for your contribution, I should have mentioned previously, sorry, our funding in terms of core budget looks very modest compared to yours and your next agenda item, I'm sure. We have a core grant from DEFRA of close to £200,000. Contributions from local authorities, Cornwall, our host authority, are the biggest with 30,000 a year, West Devon currently 8,000 a year, and hopefully I'll demonstrate a little bit of value for money for that contribution. Other projects we've got that I will mention, we have a landscape partnership lottery funded scheme over the next, that we are in the first or second, just going into the second year of a 5-year programme, that's £3.2 million. We have a farming in protected landscape scheme, which we've got DEFRA funding for, which is about 750,000 over the next 3 years. And we've just secured a grant from DEFRA for something called the Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund, which was about 100,000. I'll come back to a couple of those as we go through. So we are aware of, and indeed I've had discussions last year with Councillor Jory and your Chief Executive on your plan for West Devon to make sure we can clearly contribute to some of your priority themes. And I'll touch upon a couple of things with that. We ensure that contribution and scrutiny, or ongoing partnership, if you like, by good representation at several levels within the AONB from West Devon and support. So Rob Sekula, your Environment Officer, provides us with brilliant support on a day-to-day basis. Councillor Coulson, I mentioned, is at your current member representative. Councillor Coulson has indicated he would like to step aside, so that would be a good thing to secure or to tidy up and make clear that longer-term replacement in due course. Councillor Sellis represents Devon County on our partnership, but is very supportive of lots of the stuff we do. And Councillor Crozier, a past member of our executive, is currently the chairman of our farming in protected landscape scheme. So lots of good representation. We look to contribute to some of your key themes. So as examples under communities, some of your targets are looking at volunteering opportunities, which I'll touch upon, which we are delivering lots of at the moment and have even more ambitious plans for through the Tamar Landscape Partnership. Enhancing well-being, your focus is on active participation outdoors, active travel, health and well-being. There are obvious links with what we're doing and how we're working with you on the Tamar trails, for example. On active travel, we're trialling electric bikes and looking at electric bike charging points, working with GWR on the rail links in and out of the AONB and such like. And health and well-being and connection with nature is an obvious connected point for us, or contribution we can make. Stimulating your thriving economy, inward investment, I mentioned, we are looking at Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund, so how to attract more private sector investment into natural capital and nature-based services. The visitor economy looking to be strengthened. One of your themes, again, we're working very closely with Visit Tamar Valley as one of our active partners, both under core programmes and Tamara. And promotion of local products. We work with, for example, I was visiting Tamar Grow Local, looking at a local cooperative for local growers and finding markets and building sustainable markets for their products. And lastly, growing the natural environment, another one of your key themes, obviously increasing access, climate and biodiversity, and planting trees. Again, we have active programmes, and indeed some of our absolute core programmes I'll touch on demonstrate the contribution there. All of that is recorded, and effectively our performance is monitored via our executive in our performance against a 5-year management plan, which clearly sets out our own targets and our own themes and priority themes. We have a working programme on an annual basis, an annual plan called 5 Big Things, which is focused again around nature recovery, access and inclusion, arts, heritage and place, engagement and partnership, and the way we work. All mapped out and reported via our executive and partnership, so there is full transparency on our performance. Just touching upon a few of our core programmes that are either delivered, developed or convened by the AONB. This slide gives a taste of some of the things we're working on in terms of land management and the farming community, the agricultural transition plan that government is seeing through and designing as we speak. We had an active role in the ELMS, the Environmental Land Management Scheme test and trials, looking at soil carbon testing and electronic testing of soil health for farmers as part of their farm management plans. We finished that project last year. We've now moved into the Farming in Protected Landscape Scheme, which is a grant scheme focused on nature, place, access and resilience. And I'm pleased to say we have fully allocated the money that we were given for the first year, as a panel chaired by Councillor Crozier last week got through our final bit of allocation. So this year's money is spent and we're moving into years 2 and 3, but some fantastic case studies emerging there. And we also have programmes on invasive non-native species, for example, so removing giant hogweed, which has been a particular problem. That's a 20-year programme that's been very successful and almost eradicated it from both the Tamar and Tavy rivers in the AONB. A few other parts of the core programme looking at nature and nature recovery. So we are heavily involved in some of the flood bank realignment programmes the Environment Agency are delivering. So this side of the water at South Hoo, I don't know if people know the South Hoo site, an absolutely inspirational farm being transformed, de-intensified, with the ultimate aim of creating a nature reserve to be handed across to Devon Wildlife Trust for long-term management and biodiversity benefit. There is intertidal realignment going on there, as there is a bit major projects up and down the Tavy, the other few are the other side of the river. Habitat creation, again, we're doing lots of work with partners on projects large and small, and cow stock is the other big one there. We also, I mentioned the Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund, which is looking at how to attract private sector investment into some areas and nature-based services, so things like biodiversity, amenity, carbon sequestration, etc. We're one of 29 pilot projects happening across the UK. DEFRA is determined to attract additional private investment into that area to avoid long-term reliance completely on public subsidy. So that's an exciting, groundbreaking piece of work that we're contributing to. And we've got various other projects looking at bats, butterflies, beavers, although we're not allowed to mention them officially, but we are part of the Devon Beaver Management Group, looking at how best to manage the reintroduction and sustainable populations of beavers and some of the natural flood management services they can provide. And we, lastly, are working on our own nature recovery plan, which will identify key priority habitats and species in the AONB, and that will help us to divert extra resources to those priorities in due course, and that should be published in the first half of this year. And then lastly, on core programmes, we have a range of community-based or focused projects. I've mentioned volunteering. We have a framework called the Valley Volunteers. We're working with our Tamar scheme to strengthen volunteering opportunities, to work with partners such as the National Trust and others to increase the number of active volunteering opportunities. There are volunteer training and all sorts, as you can see some of the pictures here, in terms of installing and improving the trails, the Tamar trails, footpaths and quality and access points, etc. The trails I've mentioned, a real success and an ongoing partnership between largely West Devon and the AONB, maintaining the trails as one of the key visitor attractions, as well as available to local communities. Tourism projects I've mentioned, we're working with, I'll come on to the Tamar landscape scheme, but we're working with Visit Tamar Valley to rebuild their website to train active members within the tourism industry about sustainable tourism and how to increase the visitor attraction there. And we're signed up to the Arts in the Landscape strategy through our national association, and we work with local artist groups such as Drawn to the Valley. And again, we are exploring how we can do that on a greater scale, bringing extra visitors and providing economic benefits from that as well in due course. So those are just a taste of the core projects. We also have, I've mentioned, this £3.2 million 5-year heritage funded programme, again with contributions from other partners, including local authorities. There are 10 projects. I won't go through them, but I would urge you to visit the website for more details. They are just getting up and running now, and I'm very pleased that we've just appointed a new manager to the scheme. Hopefully this morning we've made an offer to him, so we'll have somebody to oversee that following the guy Luxton who set it all up and moved on to a new opportunity at the end of last year. Tamara covers an expanded area, although that's of less interest to you guys because it's the other side of the water, but includes an extra chunk of East Cornwall to expand the benefit of the partnership area and the area of the active projects, and again is built on a strong partnership of 27 different member organisations, including yourselves. So those are the programmes, both core funded and grant funded. I said I'd finish with a couple of just pointers towards the big picture and key issues happening. Some of you may have noticed at the weekend, so on Saturday morning, government announced their formal response to something called the Glover Review, which was Julian Glover's landscapes review completed in 2019, which had 27 recommendations. You'll be pleased to hear I'm not going to cover any of those recommendations, but suffice it to say, there are lots of opportunities, and government has very clearly set out its ambition to give a much greater profile and increased role to areas of outstanding natural beauty and some of the benefits that we can bring to our partners and the landscapes that we cover. We may be rebranded in due course. It's out to consultation as from yesterday. We may be rebranded National Landscapes rather than AONBs, because not many people know what an AONB is or what it does. And greater parity with the national parks for the AONBs or National Landscapes is one of the key ambitions coming from Glover. We were hoping that government would respond to Glover's recommendation to double the resources of AONBs. Unfortunately, that was one of the recommendations that government couldn't meet, but they are looking to give us greater stability of funding and modest increases in resourcing and capacity to do more of the things that I've mentioned. But there's lots of other stuff, including, for example, making AONBs a statutory planning consultee. At the moment, we are a consultee, but not a statutory one. And planning matters in protected landscapes is obviously of key importance and concern, and where we have links with local authority partners. We have something called the Colchester Declaration, which is with our National Association of AONBs, focusing on the nature recovery plan I've mentioned, as well as our climate change response. And just to give you a flavour for the real big picture stuff that we're working with government, with the National Association, other AONBs and our partners, including West Devon, this list of this priority areas for the National Association gives an idea of some of the potential for more of the good work that we do that we can hopefully deliver in the years to come. Thank you. As I've said on this slide, there are really strong opportunities for the AONB and our partnership. Tamar Valley, up until last year, was the youngest of all the AONBs, having been formed in 1995, and our 25-year anniversary unfortunately happened in the first year of lockdown, so it was something of a damp squib. But here's to the next 25 years. Government has since announced 2 new AONBs, so we're no longer the baby in the pack and now reaching a point of maturity and hopefully delivery, which I've given you a taste of. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dan. I have a couple of questions. One of them is really silly, but it meant a lot at the time. When I was a member of the AONB, probably in the noughties, we did a lot of dormice, building them little homes. And I remember going into the woods and the forests around here, going to do that. Are you still doing that sort of work?
Yes, we are, and indeed there is some funding that's being gathered by local collections and a small grant that we got just on the point of the first lockdown for some extra work with schools on the Beard Peninsula to do more of those building homes and surveying of dormice. So, and they will be one of our priority species in the nature recovery plan to look at how we can continue to improve habitats for them.
To think I thought that was a totally irrelevant question. I just enjoyed doing it and being on the AONB. It's a great experience. The one group of people you didn't mention that I know were connected with AONBs was Tabata. Have they morphed into something else and I didn't realise this you were doing?
They have. They've rebadged as Visit Tamar Valley, and they are one of our core partners, and indeed their chair has just become a member of our executive to further strengthen the links. And a big part of the Tamara landscape funding is working with Visit Tamar Valley, which were Tabata, to increase the activity and the scope and the attractiveness of what they do.
That's brilliant. Right. Can I just ask Councillor Lucy Wood, who's on Teams, so you won't be able to see her in the room, but go ahead, Lucy.
Hello, thanks, Dan. That was a great whiz through of all the things that you're doing. I have to say I'm really impressed. I haven't been involved with an AONB for some years now, since my Buckland Food Growers days, but it's really good to see that you're thriving. My question for you, Dan, was what would you like, or what would be the best thing that West Devon could be doing to help you in all of the projects that you're doing? Is there anything that you would ask of us?
To say more of a funding contribution would be too cheeky, so I'll park that one. More of the same, I think, is the answer. So the strength of the partnership, the support we get from your officers and members is vital. I guess in the short term, I mentioned Councillor Coulson has indicated he wants to step aside, but only doing it at the right time and in the right way. So finding a replacement and clarifying that on our partnership would be a useful and practical thing that could be done. But other than that, it's more of the same. So the collaboration and the ongoing discussions at both officer and member level is vital and really important. And again, having Councillor Crozier, for example, on our FIPL as the chairman of our FIPL panel indicates the strengths of the link. So I know it's a bit of a glib answer, but more of the same, please.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Kemp, please.
Hello. I was wondering, and I realised that perhaps this is two sections of water that are running in different directions, but how much of a close relationship do you have with the biosphere, with the North Devon biosphere? And I'm asking this because there are some issues that are difficult to tackle, like maritime development and things like that, that obviously would benefit from uniting. And I was just checking with you about how you're working on that.
So I had a brief discussion about the same just before the meeting. So we are making early links. I've only been in post 12 months, so I haven't had direct conversations, but there is a grouping of the Devon AONB, so we work closely with North Devon AONB. Jenny, who's the manager up there, is linked very closely with the work they do. And the North Devon Biosphere are one of the pilot projects on the Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund that we are now part of the 29, the sort of tranche that is following them. So we're aware of some of the work that they're doing. We're running similar projects, so that contact and collaboration should get closer, because the stuff they did was looking at nature-based services, primarily the value of tourism and how that can bring extra private sector money to protect habitats and improve visitor experience at the same time. That has direct relevance to some of the stuff we're doing, so those links will strengthen.
Yes, and in addition, I believe they're working with training farmers.
Yes.
So there's a whole range of different small projects that I can see the relevance of getting together.
And we will. And you mentioned maritime development. We haven't spoken to them on that, but we're linked into the emerging national marine park that Plymouth City Council will be delivering, and marine development and protection of heritage and usability of the estuary and the marine built environment is part of the project that we'll be working with them on as well. So there's good links.
Sorry, Mike, I just have one follow-up question. Now, all of these, in my mind, they are not only development questions, they're research questions. In what kind of blocks of time are you dealing? Are you doing 5-year planning, or are you doing 10-year planning, or how are you working?
So our management plan is a 5-year plan, so we're almost halfway through that now, so we'll begin planning for the next one, but we'll only be 2.5 years into it in the summer. So that sets out our key targets and ambitions. Government, in the Glover Review response that I mentioned, has said that they will be changing the guidance and strengthening the guidance and the role of Natural England in setting us long-term targets and how we develop our next management plan. So consultation on that plan and links with organisations that are relevant, such as the Biosphere, will begin from the back end of this year, so when we'll get into the development phase of our next 5-year plan.
Thank you.
Councillor Sellis, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you, Dan. We note that the Glover report has recommended that the AONBs become statutory planning consultees. Now, I'm delighted to hear this. I'm concerned, and I have mentioned in this chamber on numerous occasions, that some developers, when they landscape with non-Indigenous plants, for example, laurel, and I was just wondering whether you can see the Tamar Valley Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty working with West Devon and possibly developers so that we can actually enhance our area, so that we're planting plants, for example, like hazel and holly and dog roses, that type of thing. I'd like to, I think it would be really useful if members could hear what your take is on that. Thank you very much.
So you'll be aware that we had an active example of this recently that was discussed at our executive and was causing one of our officers some concern, because we had a resident who had a development as a stables complex, and she had been recommended by the planners to plant quite big swathes of laurel. So we have worked with her. It's a planning condition and it was too late to change that. So we have recommended that she plants the laurel along with native species, which hopefully will replace and can provide the similar screening over the long term. We're using that as an opportunity to work with raise it with the planner.
But I do think we have this